for Environmental Education. And I'm super excited today to chat with all of you and our wonderful panel discussion folks on the line about addressing equity in the after-school space. Patty did a really great job of giving a really brief overview of the 21st Century Community Learning Center grants and opportunities and programs, and we're going to dive right into that. First of all, would love for you all to join our Padlet if you're interested in, by chance, adding in notes or thoughts or resources as we go through the discussion today. I'd love for you all to jump on that. So I'm going to grab that link and put that in the chat for you all. There's my chat box. All right. And if you could, once you open up the Padlet, you'll see a plus sign right under where it says Padlet check-in. And if you click on that, it's going to give you a little box. And there should be 3 dots on the side. And if you click that, you can actually find a GIF. And I'd love to know how you're doing today. How are you feeling about the conversation? So that'll get us warmed up with our Padlet. Feel free to use it or not use it. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Meredith to introduce herself. And Meredith, feel free to popcorn it to the next panel panelist.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. Really quick, I'm Meredith Dash. I am the Virginia Environmental Education Specialist for the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay, also a mouthful. And we are watershed wide, but I happen to work in the Richmond, Virginia office. And then I think Jeff, hopefully, is on the line.
Great. Good morning. Can you guys hear me? I am in a cafe. My Wi-Fi is not working well now, so this is an adjustment for me. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of join your party here. I'm from the Midwest. I run Beyond School Bells, which is Nebraska's statewide after-school network, and we've made environment and conservation education a priority for our after-school programs that we support. So excited to be in the call today, and I will push it up to my friend Chris.
Thanks, Jeff. Hey, everyone. My name is Chris Knightsey. I am with the After School Alliance. I head up all of our STEM work in the after school and summer space, mostly focused on the advocacy and policy work in DC. But we also help support our partners like Jeff at the state level through the statewide after school networks and really trying to get more funding, more support for after school and summer programs, whether it's STEM, whether it's social emotional learning, whether it's other types of civic engagement type programs. But happy to join you all and help share a little bit more about the after school and summer space and the opportunities there.
Thanks so much, Chris, Meredith, and Jeff. Really appreciate you all being here for the discussion today. With that, I'm excited to introduce you to Miriam Lund, who is joining us, and she's going to be giving us a brief overview of 21st Century Community Learning Centers and her role in all of this. Miriam, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So the 21st Century After School Program and Bronman, are we going to put slides up? Okay.
Yep, I'm working on it right now. Give me 2 seconds.
Thank you.
Hopefully everybody can see them. Let me start the slideshow. And just cue me to advance them, Miriam, and I'll move them for you.
I appreciate that.
Great.
So our program actually began January 26th in 1998, and it is the very first private and government partnership between an entity that supports students. So C.S. Mott Foundation put in $1 million, and the U.S. government met that as well. And we began a discretionary grant competition. When the program ended in 2001, we actually received 3,000 applications that year. Our program is present in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and the Bureau of Indian Education. We are a designed partnership, which means LEAs partner with either community learning centers, Boys and Girls Club, 4-H, YMCA. to put on their programs, and it provides enrichment activities and tutoring services for students. We also have a broad array of enrichment activities, such as taking part in the NOAA Watershed STEM Education Partnership. And then we also have family services at the community learning centers where they can have meaningful engagement in their child's education. Next slide, please. In 2019, 2020, 1.8 million people were served by the program, an equal number of male and females. We had over 10,000 community learning centers. We had about 350,000 summer attendees, and we have more Hispanic students, followed by white and then Black students. And we also have a lot of adults and family members take part. Next slide, please. Thank you. The community learning centers reported that 49.7% of students that attended the programs actually improved their math grade, and 51.5% improved their English scores. We love to see that the rates and homework completion went up. Teachers reported 70.1%, and improved behavior among participating students was 63.4%. As a former middle school teacher, I really love to see those behaviors increase, good behaviors increase. Next slide, please. So we are really proud to partner with NOAA. Like Patty said, $2.45 million went to NOAA, and they have organizations, educational organizations in 18 states, ranging from Alaska to Florida. These STEM activities connect what students are learning during the day in school to real life applications, and it strengthens their skills and increases their interest in STEM learning. I am totally a huge fan of our NOAA partnership. Next slide, please. So Watershed STEM grantees are partnering with 100 21st century sites, and they're doing place-based watershed-related STEM projects using the NOAA resources. As of March 2021, they'd currently already reached 1,400 students and 230 21st century educators. And those educators aren't always certified teachers. It could be a paraprofessional or it could be a volunteer. One of the first things I read when I took this position about 3.5 years ago was the 2017 pilot evaluation from NOAA. And it was very enlightening. But some of what I learned is that you really have to work together. There has to be a common communication in order for students and the 21st century and the NOAA staff all to get something beneficial out of the program, which they do. The STEM activities are relevant to the students' lives. They improve their understanding and awareness of their local watersheds. And the grantees form a strong collaboration with the 21st century sites, creating relationships that have the potential of being sustained throughout the grant funding. Like I said, I'm a huge proponent of our partnership. I think Natoya and Bronwyn do so much for the students participating in our programs, opportunities that they would never have otherwise, and I'm very grateful. So thank you very much for having me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Miriam. We appreciate your just support, and we love this partnership as well. And that's kind of where I come in. I get to work with Bronwyn at NOAA. And Bronwyn, if you'd like to jump on and just quickly introduce yourself, that would be great since you're on the call.
Hey everybody, yeah, I'm Bronwyn Rice. I work with the NOAA team that's been helping coordinate the summit here today, but I sit in the NOAA Office of Education in Washington, DC, and I coordinate our partnership with NAAEE and Department of Education to support the after-school STEM work through the Watershed Education Grant Program. So yeah, happy to join the conversation today. Thanks, Tanaya.
Thanks so much, Bronwyn. And so my role at NAAA is I serve as a grant program manager for this, and I get to work with 30 incredible organizations that are connected to these 21 first century community learning centers and offering this after school watershed STEM education programs. And obviously last year was a little bit of a slower year in terms of program implementation, but I have to say and give a quick shout out to all the grantees. They have done amazing work despite the COVID challenges. And Meredith actually happens to be one of the grantees, so it's super special that she's on the call today to get her perspective. So with all of the background that we just dove into and Miriam covered and Patty covered, I'd really love to jump into the conversation. So I'm going to start off with Jeff. Jeff, do you think that there are opportunities to expand access to environmental programming using this program? This is such a great way to connect to the after school space. What are your thoughts there?
Absolutely. And in Nebraska, we've developed a program we're calling ECAP. It's our Environmental Conservation Action Program. And so I've loaded that on Padlet for those of you who are interested. And it's really built on the recognition that these 21st century programs, for all the reasons that Miriam mentioned, are great platforms for engaging a diverse range of students from all across the state, urban, rural, everywhere there are kids in school buildings, you can run these after school programs. And, that's kind of our basic starting point, is that these are community owned buildings that should be used during the out of school time hours to engage kids in hands-on learning. And we really, I can't mute, I'm in a coffee bar, so I can't mute my background music. But our premise for the after school programs is that they should be exciting, engaged, inspired learners. And there is nothing better than after school environmental education. You get kids excited and engaged about learning. So we feel like this is a great opportunity to take environmental literacy concepts, environmental education, programming, and reach a whole new generation of young people and get them excited about environmental education. So we're big believers in it. We're doing a statewide initiative that's pulling in private dollars to match the 21st century investments that are going on across Nebraska. I think it's a huge leverage opportunity for funders who are interested in kind of exploring this space. But I think, as Crystal mentioned, there are huge opportunities right now, as some of the earlier speakers mentioned, to take advantage of this unprecedented federal investment in after school programming. So I will stop there and get Adele off.
That's so wonderful, Jeff, and thank you. And Adele definitely adds to the ambiance. So thanks, Adele, as well. I love that. And especially as a parent myself, it's so great to get my daughter outside after she's done with school. She wants to decompress and do fun things. And this gives us a really opportunity to really look at environmental issues with kids that might not get it in the school time. And so this is just really a great opportunity. Chris, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well.
Sure. And sorry, I don't have it down in the background, so I'm not giving off the same vibes as Jeff was able to give off. But I think I want to focus on the current moment, right? So we've got an opportunity. There are many challenges, but I think the opportunity is really there for this focus on re-engagement, right? So schools have, those that have been in session over the last, 12 months almost, or those who are returning back to in-person learning either now or in the fall. There's going to still need to be a big focus on the re-engagement of students to make sure that these efforts around learning recovery or learning acceleration are actually fruitful and successful. So one way to really do that, right, is to engage kids in something they care about, something they're interested in. And lots of the research shows, and we've seen it, in the media as well, is students and young people really care about their futures. They want to understand how they can participate in society and help to make sure that their future is successful and that the climate and the environment is healthy and they have opportunities to succeed and thrive. So I think that's an opportunity there. Jeff mentioned the flexibility within the after school space. Partners, whether they're 21st century programs or statewide funded programs or just other one-off type fee-for-service type programs in the after-school space are always looking for opportunities to partner. They're always looking for curriculum. They're always looking for professional development. They're always looking for these different types of projects that they can engage their students in. So there's plenty of opportunity there, and kind of making sure that you're able to engage those folks and really bring your resources and your expertise to the table is really an opportunity for the field itself.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just kind of jumping off of your touch on the partnerships, I'd love for you to speak a little bit of this, and maybe we can also like move it on to somebody else as well. But you know, cultivating those partnerships, how can we cultivate collaborative and sustainable partnerships to support youth in the after school space? I'd love for you to just kind of continue on that thought, and then maybe we can pass that on to somebody else afterwards.
Was that for me or Jeff?
That's for you, Chris.
And maybe actually, yeah, maybe I'll just kick it off, and Jeff can really,
Right.
he's the pro here. I think the biggest opportunity for partnerships is around not just like that trend, like we always talk about transactional and transformational. Within this particular space and environmental literacy, climate change, environmental conservation, there's really that transformational opportunity and engaging, you know, the programs and the youth in projects that they can actually take ownership and agency in and really thrive and really step up and kind of have their voices elevated. But really, I think Jeff's probably the real expert here around the partnerships piece. I want to give him an opportunity.
Sure. Yeah, no, we feel like this is a fantastic opportunity for partnerships. And I think probably this year more than most, that was really brought to light. You know, as we're moving into the after school space, we realized that the teachers have been pushed to the limit this year, and that you're really looking for that second shift youth development professional, second shift kind of spark plug to come in and make that after school space dynamic. And our big bet is that folks in the environmental community are perfect partners to invite in and share their passion for conservation, for wildlife preservation, for whatever the issue might be, climate change certainly, and bring in that second group of folks who, you know, it's so much easier to bring the experts to the building where the young people are than expect the young people to get to that program. So by focusing on school-based after-school programs, which is what we're focused on in Nebraska, we take that transportation barrier kind of off the table, which is a huge barrier across the country. How do you get kids to these exciting programs? So, you know, we have found that the interest groups, especially again around environmental issues, hands-on project-based learning, citizen science projects, those folks are eager to come in and work with communities that really, with school populations that really represent the diversity of the communities that they want to serve. So I think it creates a fantastic opportunity to start building those partnerships that can turn into sustainable program partners. So that's kind of where we're looking at over the next several years, is to use some of the funding that's becoming available now because of the Recovery Act to kind of plant the seeds and plant those sustainable partnerships that will last in perpetuity.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Jeff and Chris, for touching on that impromptu. Meredith, as a grantee, I'd love to hear a little bit of your perspective on developing these sustainable partnerships, and just a little touch on your experience with the 21st Century grants that NOAA and NAAA has awarded you.
My situation is really unique, I feel like, and it's very special because I have gotten to work with, in Richmond, Virginia, the way things work with Richmond Public Schools is a lot of the after school programs are held through a coordinating organization called Next Up. And Next Up then has different providers that they hire. So they're hiring people that teach like sewing, or they're hiring karate people, or fit for kids, or financial literacy people, or whoever they're hiring. So they are taking on all those organizations, those providers per se, and then they are able to be the one-stop shop where kids can sign up for the different classes they like, and they coordinate that. And so I've never been able to work with Next Up before. So having that new partnership develop for me as a non-formal educator, I was able to, or I'm going to be able to, because of COVID, we weren't quite able to yet, but we will be partnering with them to offer an after-school program. But the unexpected benefit from that was meeting all the partners. So we have a monthly meeting with Next Up, who organizes all those providers together in a big meeting and offers them a chance and a space to coordinate around environmental literacy. They're actually offering them the chance to partner with us. So what we were able to do with our funding is provide those providers with environmental literacy education that they've never had a chance to have before. So, I've got people signing up for my PD series that have never visited the James River, which runs right through Richmond. We had one teacher who basically, they've never been down to the river before. They've lived in Richmond for 18 years. They've always wanted to go. They've never had the opportunity. And this teacher teaches cooking. And she was thrilled to learn so much about her local watershed and have that opportunity provided for her, that she could then bring some of her knowledge back. So that the outdoor learning that she learned through our PD series, she's going to bring that back to her students. And you may not think there's a way to relate cooking to the outdoors, but there are many ways. And we have been able to make that connection for her. So now those providers are kind of mini teaching pushing environmental education into all their little programs, which for us is a huge win, because I can't do that by myself alone with all the after school programming that happens in Richmond. But if I can do it kind of teacher by developing those partnerships, it's working very well. And that's the portion that we've done so far with our grant funding. The student program is going to then, for some of our classes that we can offer, the STEM watershed based education. So really excited to work with Next Up, a partner that I've never had the chance to work with before. It's been very thrilling.
That's amazing, Meredith. I'm always so thrilled and excited to hear all of your updates. It's just really great to see that these partnerships just continue to grow. And as we learn more about each other within the partnerships, that's what makes it more sustainable. And we all know on this call that environmental education is for everyone, and it's lifelong learning. And so we can connect it to professions and students that might not initially be super connected, but still get them in the fold of learning about everything that's going on in their backyards and so forth. Meredith, just to kind of keep moving in this direction, how else can we ensure underserved populations have access to these types of enrichment programs that they see learning and they're able to be outdoors, and how do we see that developing with these collaborations and partnerships?
So I just want to be clear, if I look down, it's because I took my notes so I wouldn't forget anything. So I just want to be totally transparent that I'm not looking at you guys, but looking down at my notes so I don't forget to say anything. Because I did think through this question. I think it's very important. And I think it's a good issue that a lot of us are facing, and maybe why you joined this breakout session. And I'm just speaking from my personal experience in urban Richmond, Virginia, where we have a majority African-American population. We have Latinx, we have a wide variety of kids that we're dealing with in Richmond Public Schools and that I work with. And so really ensuring that we get in there means, for me, breaking everything down in baby steps. We have a real issue right now with kids that are coming to us in our after school programs that don't want to go outside because they have fears already established. And so part of what we do is try and work with those, again, partners to break down some of those fears in the hopes that then they will transfer that to their students. So we are working on breaking down like fear of dirt, like being dirty, fear of being so sweaty outside, fear of all those kinds of things that you wouldn't normally think of if you grew up as an outdoor experienced person. But when you grow up in a city environment and you're very urbanized, you may not go outside as often. So you have those fears already set in your mind. And so I really recommend that the way we can ensure this learning takes place is that we have to break everything down into baby steps. And that's worked really well with the audience that we've had, is just sharing very small baby steps that people can take to getting outside. And so also our biggest thing right now that we're focused on is safe access to their schoolyard. We do have in urban environments a lot of fear of going outside because of the safety issue. There may be, you know, a housing project near there that they're been told don't go outside because there could be school shootings or there could be something else. So we have a lot of that issue to deal with as well. But we are promoting safe access to schoolyards, where you can go, where the boundaries exist when you go outside, establishing boundaries and doing things like that that really help build the relationship with the teachers, again, so that they can transfer that to students. And then the other thing that I would say is repetition. I know this kind of sounds strange, but if you can go out, take students outside in smaller increments, but more often, again, you're building that repetition of that it feels good outside. You're building the relationship of they trust you outside, that the wall between your classroom is not there anymore, that there's outside too. And so repetition has really helped us with these underserved populations. And my example for that really quick is just that we've used something called curiosity farming, where even though we were stuck inside for our last school year, we use something that is PowerPoint slides all put together, or I guess Google Slides, where we sent kids, or in this case, teachers, outside for 10 minutes to take a wonder walk, take one picture, bring it back. And then those, everyone had the same slide set and they had to put in their picture, and were given a set of questions of what did they notice? What did they wonder about? And it started generating this curiosity, but we did it in every single PD that we did every time. So teachers that were coming to our PDs knew it was coming, the curiosity farming, and they noted that was one of their favorite things. And we've noticed that that one is the most that one thing from the PD, the takeaway that they've used the most with their students. So repetition, repetition, repetition.
That's wonderful. Thanks so much, Meredith, for sharing your journey, especially as it's been a little bit different due to COVID impacts. And we are learning so much about it. And so moving into another question, I'd love to call on Chris for this, but how can we meaningfully advance this work using existing COVID-19 economic relief funding and the potential for additional funding from pandemic recovery, infrastructure, and/or climate change efforts? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, sure. I was actually just about to answer Bart's question too, that was in the chat, but I'll get to that later. Because yes, there is an answer to that. The answer is it depends, but I'll share more. But when looking at like the actual COVID-19 economic relief, so Jeff mentioned this a couple times as well. So we've got, you know, at least 3 pandemic relief bills that were passed in the last 15 months, really going all the way back to March 2020. Billions and billions of dollars in funding specifically for education, but also for municipal and city governments, and childcare, and many different types of opportunities that align in some way with what we all are trying to do, probably on this call, is engage students. So I think, you know, with those going back to 2020 or March 2020, there's still some funds at the state and specifically within the governor's offices that are still available to be allocated and spent. But more specifically, the American Rescue Plan, which was passed a few months ago, which was provided a lot, an unprecedented, which is the word of 2021, I guess, and probably 2020 as well, right? An unprecedented amount of funds specifically for education. And I think Meredith also mentioned it as well, or Patty did at one point, is that there were specific set-asides within that American Rescue Plan for education funds, specifically for after school and summer enrichment at the state level. So states were able to allocate some of those resources, and still are. I mean, they're still coming up with ways to spend these dollars and spend these monies on different types of supports for the students. But there's opportunities there. There's, you know, $1.2 billion overall in after school set aside, $1.2 billion in summer enrichment set aside. That money is supposed to be allocated over the next 2.5 years, a little more than 2 years. There's also ways that they could probably stretch that out a little bit too. so there's those dollars. I think one way to really engage in that type of funding is to work directly, or at least reach out directly to the statewide after school networks like Jeff is a part of in Nebraska, but there's one in every state that are doing a lot of work specifically around these funds at the state level for after school, especially looking for like content experts, right? So not just someone to provide programming to students, but also to come in and provide specific content supports like STEM, but within STEM, like environmental literacy and environmental education and climate change education work. So there's a lot of funding there. I will drop in, since I've already got this like drafted answer, I'll drop in another link in a second once I'm finished that actually provides a lot more detail around the American Rescue Plan and the opportunity there. Aside from that, I think looking forward, right, there's been a lot of talk around infrastructure. There's been a lot of talk around climate change. We've been working specifically, the After School Alliance has been working on some policy recommendations that are very broad in scope, looking at the federal government. Where are there other opportunities for federal agencies to kind of replicate maybe, or at least adopt like the NOAA Department of Ed partnership, but utilizing some of the other resources of the federal government, which has tons of resources, lots of opportunities around climate and environment, utilizing some of those, but also looking at the state and local levels where districts can step in and provide maybe some of these ARP funds that they have to really engage kids in different ways, right? It's all about engaging and particularly re-engaging and making sure that it's something that is appealing to youth. But let me drop in some more information that I hope will be helpful to you all to kind of think through those, but also, as I said earlier, the statewide after school networks are an excellent resource at the state level and even at the local level that I think for folks that are looking to engage their programs in cities or even across their states, you should certainly reach out to those statewide after school networks.
Thanks
And
so
just so you know, Tanoya, I tried to respond to Bart also, but it says I cannot actually respond to everyone in the chat. So Bart, maybe you can share what I wrote so everyone can see it. Thanks.
That's strange. Or Meredith, do you want to speak to the question?
Oh, I sure can. So, well, Bart was just asking about, the coordinating group in Richmond that I was referring to, like Next Up. It's pretty essential for keeping things working in the after school world. And coordinating everything. And he was just wondering, is that the norm? Like in an urban or suburban or rural school system, is that what's happening? How are other schools after school programs coordinated? So I just commented basically in Next Up's case that they don't employ their own staff. That's why they have these providers that sign up. And the benefit of that is it allows them to provide a wide variety of classes for students, because anybody can sign up with Next Up to provide something for after school. That's why we get such a wide variety, which is great for students. I'm not sure if it's the norm. I don't think it's how the surrounding counties in Richmond handle it, but I'm not sure, again, across Virginia, what the other after school situations are like. I know we have an out of school time alliance that does provide, there's some stuff from the YMCA and then private organizations that offer after school, but I don't know if like the way Next Up does it as a hub is the norm. I don't think it is.
So I'll just build on that. So Next Up is part of Every Hour Counts, which is a national group of citywide intermediary organizations that support after school, either directly or through different types of capacity building, training, curriculum support, and content support like that. There are about, I think it's 28 Every Hour Counts cities. So if you want to learn more about that, since I can't drop it directly in the chat, go to everyhourcounts.org and you'll see if your particular city or region is actually Every Hour Counts intermediary. And like Richmond, all of them operate in similar ways. So there's plenty of opportunities there.
In Lund, and reaching out and working with the network is good, but also letting the state 21st century coordinator know what people's interests are. They can actually put a priority in their RFAs or environmental science. Come from the ground up. It can come from the top down as well. And a lot of the 21st century sites across the country do have advisory councils. Not them, but the more people that put their heads together and talk about programming, oftentimes the better that programming is.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, Miriam. And that's so, so, so true. We have this great opportunity to work together and collaborate on so many great initiatives. Since we got our 5 minutes back, which is super exciting, we can dive into another question. And I'd like to pose this to any of our speakers for today, but how do we ensure that this is done both equitably within the districts and across the states? Any thoughts there?
Well, I can jump in. The benefit of partnering with 21st Century is that it does kind of have baked into it a formula that appeals to kids who are frequently underserved by programs. So we love working with 21st Century in Nebraska because it's serving the kids that need the programming and are underserved in the programming the most. So kind of based on that. But then you also, I think, have the ability to work with the education department. So the Department of Education in Nebraska, very interested in providing additional opportunities for learning in persistently low-performing schools. So they create new opportunities for us to go in and provide this supplementary services that really do engage kids. And as Miriam was saying earlier, one of the great benefits of the 21st Century programs is that they provide this platform for kids to get re-excited about learning in kind of a different way, bringing in those community partners like Meredith that make the learning fun and exciting, or a way that get kids excited about learning in general. And that partnership piece is so important to kind of reaching kids who haven't had these kinds of opportunities provided, traditionally. So that's, Nebraska, we really look at the statewide network to partner with 21st Century and private funders to kind of bring those two strands together to kind of supplement the funding they get through 21st Century with additional dollars that can really allow them to go deep on areas of student interest. And let me just be very clear, environmental issues are the issues that kids care about. And if you're really trying to pitch to areas that'll engage kids on things that they care the most about, going after environmental issues, climate change, those kinds of issues, get a ton of student interest. And as we all know, it's all about student interest to get kids excited and engaged in learning. So that's kind of our formula in Nebraska. And I would really recommend that people think about, as Miriam was saying, that partnership with the 21st Century Office of the State, but then also down in your community, to those folks who are coordinating at a community level or even a building level in rural communities. There are lots of folks who are doing that work kind of in small communities that don't have a big infrastructure, but there always is a key kind of gatekeeper that you need to be able to make those connections with to bring those programming opportunities into the schools that need.
So true. Thank you so much for sharing. Any of our other panelists have thoughts? We have a few more minutes.
Sure, I'll just jump in quickly. I think when we're talking about equity within the programs or districts or the state, right? Like there's money that certainly is needed to address equity, but we also need to have an idea of what the needs are of the particular programs, and in particular of those programs, the students themselves. So doing some sort of landscape scanning process or needs assessment to really understand what's needed before we actually provide some sort of intervention. So we can't just give money to a city or a school district without understanding what the actual needs are. You can give money to a program or a school district, and they might need professional development and curriculum or supplies, and they might not have access to that. I think another piece there is also the transportation. especially if you're trying to get kids out of their particular environments into another area to really understand like what are the opportunities or what are the particular challenges around the environmental science and climate change. There needs to be transportation, not just funding for transportation, but actual transportation vehicles. The other thing that I always try to draw back to, right, is are the efforts that are being provided to the kids and the students and the families culturally responsive and culturally relevant to that student population? Is someone like me the best person to go into a city and work with a different population that looks different than me and try to engage them around something that I think I would be interested in, and explain issues that might not resonate quite directly with them? Or should I try to partner with other groups and maybe learn a little bit more about the actual needs and interests of the students and the families, and then maybe tailor my programming and opportunities and engagement activities around what their actual interests and needs are? I know a lot of folks probably understand that, but always want to stress that thinking more intentionally about the actual population and what their interests and needs might be is incredibly important to addressing that equity issue itself.
So Tanaya, this is Miriam again. I agree with Chris that, you definitely need to think about what equity means in the community you're working with. But I want to speak directly to the transportation issue. That's one thing that we encourage our states to do, is to provide the necessary funding for transportation so that kids have the opportunities that they need. Oftentimes, transportation is underfunded, and it's important for the writers of the grant that's going to go to the state, for them to understand exactly what is needed so that they can put it into their budgets, because they do have to look at the budgets to make sure that whatever they're doing was approved by the peer reviewers. So that's just a tip. Make sure whoever's writing those applications really has a good idea of what the budget is that's needed for the actual activities that are embedded in the application.
That's a really great point. Thanks so much, Miriam, for sharing that tip. This has been such a great discussion, and I'd love to open it up to all of the participants. If you have any questions for our panelists, we would love to keep the conversation going and to get your thoughts as well. I see our Padlet is being littered with all of the wonderful links, and I'll go ahead and continue to put links there, but I'd love to open it up to questions or thoughts.
I was just gonna, if anyone has any questions, please go for it or put them in the chat or whatever. But I was gonna mention one more thing that I think is important and relevant to this conversation, is that the one of the things that's happened because I've participated in this grant as a grantee, the partnership that I've made, not only with just Next Up, but with actually who was with me and is helping me with the grant, which is the James River Park System, which is our local park system to Richmond. The educators there and I have developed such a good partnership. We were able to go into a next grant and apply for a new funding source, a new grant that is going to help us actually advance the work that we're doing. So that next grant is going to be some BWET funding to try and create an environmental literacy plan. So we were talking about trying to ensure that everything is done equitably across the districts and across states. And I think unless districts start to recognize the need for environmental literacy plans in their actual district, not just statewide, I'm not as concerned about state, maybe some of you are, and I don't want to take that away, but the locality itself, everything is so unique and so localized, especially in Richmond. I mean, we have our own unique history. We have our own unique James River running through the city. There's so much that needs to be written about just that part, that I think that the additional partnership that I've made with the James River Park System, now being able to apply for additional funding to take something to the next level, as in helping the district write their environmental literacy plan, is like a huge, huge win as a result of this 21st century grant. So there are side offshoot benefits that are happening that maybe people are not hearing about. And so I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that.
And I would just confirm that that's what we frequently see, that you get an opportunity to start a partnership and then it just spreads in unexpected ways because the relationships, the mutual wins are so obvious. Once you start that partnership and you get kids excited about programming, people can see a variety of different ways to grow program partnerships in new and innovative ways. So yeah, I would encourage people just to find that early easy win. And then from that early easy win, the whole range of potential partnerships.
This is Bronwyn. I wanted to piggyback on something Meredith said, or kind of where you were going, I think, Meredith, about getting creative looking at funding sources, because, the 21st Century Program, the grants provided through 21 CCLC aren't explicitly for environmental education. And we've, through our partnership with ED, provided another funding stream to help folks partner with those grantees, which is, the program Meredith is working under. But there's no reason that you couldn't potentially apply directly for 21st century funds for an environmental education type program. And we know of past NOAA BWET grantees that have done that. And obviously it depends on what that state competition looks like and the details of that. But, the environment is such a great way to study any academic subject, right? You can read about the environment, you can write about and journal what you have observed and what you're learning. And so there's, literacy components, math, core disciplines there that you can do through an environmental context. So I think, thinking creatively about some of these funding streams as an opportunity to fund environmental education work, even if that's not explicitly how it's designed or what it's intended for, it can be in some cases. So I think that's a great opportunity with the 21st century funding to be thinking about if that's appropriate for you. And then I also wanted to flag something going through the chat here. Patty added a link to a best practices clearinghouse for the outdoor efforts for COVID. I'm not familiar with that. So Patty, I don't know if you want to share a little bit more about what that is, but we can certainly help get the word out about that. I'm assuming it is about trying to document some of the best practices this past year through the challenging times of the pandemic, but I'm curious to hear more about that.
Yeah. So it's an initiative by the department to identify, there's 3 categories of best practices: reopening safely, so might talk about barriers and cleaning, etc. Then student support, so it looks at providing supports to students, families, and young children, including social emotional learning and other needs of the community. And then also educator supports, like what kind of professional development was offered. So I think it's an opportunity to kind of elevate the work that's been done in environmental education, whether there were summer programs or after school programs or other, just any initiative that, brought some sort of joy and service to the community through your efforts. Here's a way to sort of put a spotlight on it.
That's great. Thank you all for sharing such great thoughts and insights and resources and links. And I am doing my best to put them on the Padlet. Looks like other people are too. So you can definitely refer to this as a resource to check back into after this conversation is over. But speaking about conversations, one of the things that I just love to touch on is being the implementation partner with NOAA, connected to U.S. Department of Education. It's a partnerships of partnerships of partnerships of partnerships. And as a grant manager, what I've seen is just the wealth and the depth that has come out of these partnerships and the conversations. And Bronwyn and I, when we started putting together the RFP for this competition, we had talked a lot about really creating a community within the grantees, and that is something that I've had the honor to work on and really get to know the grantees sort of one-on-one, but then also help them to navigate through and help them to connect to each other to navigate through. And there's so many conversations that have come up through the grantees wanting to know how do they adjust their programs? How do they change over and make evaluation work in this digital space? How can we keep it culturally responsive? How can we make sure that we're making our PDFs accessible? There's so many equity and inclusion conversations that we've had as a group to enhance and better our programs through this funding and these partnership opportunities. So I definitely want to speak to that because it has been a really great opportunity to see that develop, even though this has been a challenging year. Earlier on in the chat, I put a link to our 21 First Century Community Learning Center grant opportunity that we have at NAAEE. If you scroll down to the bottom, we have a blog series called the Watershed Chronicles, and there you get firsthand blogs from our grantees themselves talking about the partnership and also talking about you know, just the trials and tribulations, but also successes that they've had during this time. So if you'd like to dig into that experience a little bit more, I encourage you to check that out, and I will go ahead and put that link as well. It looks like we are winding down right on the list. Thank you, Miriam, for sharing. Thank you, Patty. Thank you all for all the amazing work that you do. And I'm hoping that we can keep the conversation going. Feel free to reach out to any of us through the information on the summit, and enjoy the rest of your summit. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Tanoya.